Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hope Discovered podcast by ComQuest. My name is Bill. If you have never heard our program before, what we try to do here is provide messages of hope. And always central to our message is that recovery is possible. A lot of times this can be from addiction, sometimes mental health, sometimes trauma, or just circumstances that one has to face in their life. And here again, hope happens here. That is our message. Our guest today is Tina Ryee. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Bill?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad that you are here.
Thank you.
Tina is the coach of the Malone University cross country and track teams and the race director of the USATF Women's 6K Road Race National Championship. Tina is a role model for young athletes and an advocate for mental well-being. Tell us a little bit about your position and your role as a coach.
Yes. So I am going into my 5th year at Malone this fall, being a coach. And I started out as a grad assistant 5 years ago and worked my way up to the head women's coach. Last year, I took over the men's team, and I'm very excited to announce that I am moving in a different position, a different role this year, which I'm really excited about. So my official title now will be Director of Cross Country and Track and Field. So I'm taking over the track side of things and mentoring my assistant coaches, and we're really excited about this merge.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So are you from the Stark County area? Where are you from?
Yes, I actually was born and raised here. I went to Canton Central Catholic, and I went to school there, and I actually ran there. And then I pursued my running career after Central. I pursued it at Malone University. So I'm a strong alum for the Pioneers, and it feels really good being back in a position where I can give back. And I just really am passionate about the work I do.
Were you always inclined to run? I noticed that with runners in particular, when they're 5 or 6 years old, they're just running through the backyard. You can tell right away, this kid is going to be a runner. Were you one of those?
Actually, I was. So at a very young age, my mom saw a lot of potential in me. She too was a runner, and she was, I want to say, in the heat of her prime of running. She actually started running later in life. And during that time, she took a majority of us, me and my siblings, to these road races where they would offer, a fun run mile. And I'll never forget, she put me in a fun run mile. And I was so angry at her for putting me in this race, because if you know who I am, it has to come from me. I have to decide to do it. And so I was so angry that I was actually winning the race and overall for the girls. But because I was so mad, I looked behind me and noticed that the second girl that was behind me was, so many meters behind me, that I sat in the middle of the street right before the finish line and let her pass me, and then got up and finished the race.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, my mom saw something in me at a very young age. I clearly was not a fan at first, but I'm really grateful she pursued me into running.
Yes. Tell us, that's interesting that you mentioned that psychology, I guess. Tell us a little bit about the mindset of a runner as opposed to what might be different in other sports.
Yeah. Well, like most sports, but specifically for running, majority of how you perform and the outcome of your races is going to be based off of your mindset and your attitude. And I know for me, I always did astronomically better when my mindset was right and when I had a positive, outlook on a race. And so it plays a huge role, a pivotal role in the way you perform. And I think just your well-being overall as well.
Like so many young people do, and I was certainly one of them, although I was nowhere near as athletic as you were. But at some point in your youth, you do feel invincible. Mm-hmm. Did you feel that way?
Yes. I would definitely say there were many times where I thought I was unstoppable, especially in the running world, where I would toe the line and I just knew I was going to take the field. And that's a really great confidence to have. But also, when life hits you or you get in a race where you're not used to that because, the field is more elite, it can kind of rattle your confidence.
Sure. Something did happen that caused your love of the sport to fall off. Mm-hmm. So that kind of superwoman type of the way you described it to me when we talked in our pre-production meeting, that kind of got shaken a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about that time in your life?
Yes, of course. Well, it was quite some time ago, but it happened during the time I was in college and I was 19 years old. And that fall semester, my brother passed away. He was in a severe car accident, and actually he was killed by a drunk driver, and that just shook my world. It shook my family's world. And during that time, before he had passed, like weeks before he had passed, I actually got injured, and I remember being so frustrated that I was injured, and then this whole new life experience took over, and it was like this injury was so minor, and I recognized that I was going to, for the first time, be battling in some capacity a mental illness of getting into a deep depression, not feeling good about myself, and also just battling grief.
That's something that I've noticed, in particular, professional athletes in particular. They're very young. They've generally been handed the world through college, and everyone's telling them how great they are. And that time period, especially for a professional athlete, rolls off very quickly, even in normal circumstances. But especially when something like that happens, the mindset of a professional athlete or any athlete, just someone who's very determined, like yourself, very successful college athlete, when that world gets shaken up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be from a trauma, like as in your case, but just anything, an injury. Now, all of a sudden, I'm an accountant. How does that play out in someone's mind when they are so invincible for so long and then they find out they're not?
Yeah, that's a great question. What really happened, I know from my own experience, was I obviously was actually dealing with a loss, but then you're grieving a loss of your sport a little bit. And, when my mental side was not good, I just could not perform. And really, it wasn't even necessarily for me about the performance. It was just the love was gone. And when that happens, it's really taking a step back and recognizing that there's some other big issues that you need to conquer before you can toe the line. And sports has given me so much confidence in who I am. I actually was not as confident, I want to say, in my younger years, but this sport has given me so much confidence. And so when you take that away and then you have this traumatic experience that you're dealing with, you feel sort of lost. You start, questioning yourself of who you are and what does this mean and what would life look like without this sport? And those were some of the questions that were going through my mind when I was experiencing the loss of my brother and also just being injured. It was like, the statement or the saying is so true, when it rains, it pours.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what was happening. Those 2 years of college, it was like setback after setback with running, and then traumatic experience, lost my brother. And then it was just more stress piled on. My sleep was interrupted. I could hardly sleep with all the stress I was dealing. And stress just has a physical impact on your body, especially just your mental state has a physical impact. And so it was very complex and very I want to say it was like a soul searching journey for me of who am I and what does this look like if I didn't have this sport? And I want to say that for me, I concluded that no matter what, running has given me so much in my life. Even if I were to close the book on running right now, I would still be worth it. I would still be someone great. And I think that was the turning point for me. And I can't specifically remember, the year it happened. Actually, I do remember a specific moment when it happened. It's in my head right now. But when that was a turning point for me, it was so beautiful because running started becoming fun again. Mm-hmm. It was like when I believed in my heart that I was okay without this sport and I took the pressure off because people knew me as a runner. They still do. They still ask me today, like, oh, are you training for anything? And I'm not at the moment. And that's something also a new battle I've had to deal with. But people knew me as a runner around here, and they associate me as, the great runner. And so when I wasn't doing that, it was really, really hard. And I felt guilty for not performing a certain way. And there was just so many complex emotions wrapped around that. But when I got to that point where I recognized that I am worthy without this sport, even if I never PR'd again, or if I never towed the line and won a race again, it was going to be okay. And that's really the awakening of when I started gaining confidence back in myself, was when I told myself, oh, I'm okay with or without this sport. And then it was like, boom, my performance level went through the roof.
Sure.
During my college experience.
That was going to be one of the, when we have this program and we talk to individuals who have been on this kind of a journey, there's kind of like an awakening moment. Mm-hmm. And when you're caught in the cycle, you feel that it's never going to come. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would be your advice to someone who may be caught in that spot?
Sure.
Where the bright light just isn't there yet. That light at the end of the tunnel just isn't there yet. You managed to work your way through it. Mm-hmm. What would be your advice? How do you find the strength to persevere until you get down that tunnel and you can see some light?
Yes. I want to say for me, I have such a strong faith, so I don't want to disregard my faith. But also, I also know the importance of not dealing with it by yourself. And so I'm a type of person, I'm very self-sufficient. I'm very independent. And so it's really hard for me to sometimes express my emotions and what I'm dealing with and feeling. And I tend to want to deal with things on my own. And that was something I had to learn was, no, I don't need to deal with this on my own. And so I think when you come to that conclusion of, I don't need to deal with this on my own, I can let others in, and you find those safe people to open up to, and you find those people that want to support you and get you back to where you want to go, that's a game changer. And also, I think it's being completely and unshatterably honest with yourself of where you're at. And so, for me, it was like, I'm fine. And then I had to take a step back, have some more self-awareness and say, you know what? I'm not fine. I'm not good. My mental state is not right. I need to fix this. And so when you can have more self-awareness, you can practice more, have more, self-discipline in yourself and knowing what you need to change. But also I think too, and I say this about training, is the healing process. And when you're going through trauma, it's not always going to look linear. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're going to take 5 steps forward and then you're going to take 3 steps back. And so if you can be kind with yourself and knowing that, hey, this isn't going to be a linear experience, 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2, and you have that recognition about the process, you're going to be able to move forward when you took those, steps back where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm set back. But knowing, no, you're still on this journey, keep moving forward and just being completely, confident in what you want to accomplish.
That is absolutely great advice. So many times when it comes to mental health, people won't reach out because they feel it as a sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, it's just like anything else. We say that so often here. If you hurt your elbow, you go to the doctor.
Sure.
And, if you're hurting emotionally, you get help. And that's something that I feel that message is so important, that having a good support system and not dealing with it by yourself was not something that you needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
How do you incorporate these really wonderful lessons of well-being
Mm-hmm.
into your coaching? I would have to say, especially for young people, that would be such an important thing, because young people are always, especially athletes, you got to win. You have to be strong. But then there are times when, like you said, sometimes it's good to ask for help. I can't handle this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you incorporate that lesson into your coaching?
Yes, it's actually a huge reason why I decided to get into the coaching world was my personal experience at Malone. And there's a reason why I specifically came back to my alma mater to coach there. And it's because I had such a great experience with my own coaches. And I realized that coaches like that are not everywhere. Actually, a lot of them are not willing to walk with you when you are battling these mental barriers. And I actually did not go to Malone at first. I went somewhere else and I transferred in. And so I do have that comparison of what it looks like to be a transformational coach rather than a great coach. And a great coach, to me, yeah, they're great, but they're only going to look at you as a number, and they're only going to take you in as what's going to benefit their program or how fast you can run. But a transformational coach, to me, is someone that's going to focus on the total development of the student athlete, emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally. And that's actually what I received at Malone with Coach Hazen and Coach David Gramlich. Was they took me in, they knew where I was at. I actually physically was beat up from the training I was doing at the last program I was from. And so when I came in, my times weren't, where they should have been. And they were like, no problem. And so I was dealing with that and feeling really good. And then I got injured, and then my brother passed away. So it was like all these barriers, and they could have easily said, you know what, you're not producing what you used to in high school. We're gonna cut you. And at the time, they were a winning team. They were going to nationals on the NAIA levels. And so they could have easily cut the cord with me, but they didn't. They recognized what I was going through, and they just walked me through what I was battling. And I just remember thinking, this is exactly the way it should be. And I just don't understand why we don't have more coaches like this. And I think we've done a really good job at implementing more mental awareness and focusing on mental health for our student athletes in the collegiate world, which I want to applaud NCAA on. But also, I still think we have so much work to do. And so, landing the plane for you, how I implement it is specifically going into this fall, I'm going to implement at least 3 mental days for them, meaning I'm a very committed person. But if you need a mental day where you don't want to come to this practice, it's going to be okay. And that's that's one of your 3 mental days, and implementing those days where they can just have total freedom of their schedule, because it is a commitment. And sometimes it gets really overwhelming. And a lot of my students specifically are pre-med or they're in nursing majors, and that is just wear and tear on your body and your mental capacity. And so I recognize that it's not always about running. For me as a coach, it's about their mental state. And truthfully, if their mental state is not there, they're not going to perform. Their body is going to hold on to that stress, and it's going to cause them to be prone to injuries. And so for me, it's a no-brainer. And so implementing these mental days for them, also having bi-weekly meetings, individual meetings with my athletes, just checking in. Hey, how are you? How's it going? We don't even need to talk about running, but how are you? And so for me, that personal connection, that trust is the foundation of my program.
That is so refreshing, because I can tell you, I'm a I'm not going to say how much, but I am older than you. And I come from a generation where, when you were playing football, you could get knocked into next week. And the coach would say, shake it off, get back out there. Mm-hmm. You could have a concussion, So it is so important. I understand the need to motivate. I understand the need to push for excellence, but I also understand the need that, these are human beings, and especially student athletes. They're developing in so many ways. And that healthy sense of self-awareness that you talk about is so important. Speaking of young people today, they have been around a number of different challenges with the COVID, for example.
Yes.
You've had people who have been isolated.
Yes.
They have missed, I'm sure, a lot of training, a lot of plans that they may have had for their future, have had to take a sideline or go a different route. So it's been a difficult time for a lot of young folks. For our listeners in general, and being ComQuest, we have a lot of, people in the community that we support with mental health. The opiate crisis is still very much with us. There's so much to deal with today. What would be your message of hope for people today? You have so many wonderful life lessons. What would be a good parting shot, I guess, for lack of a better term, in terms of hope and a good, healthy self-awareness?
Yeah, I think, for me, the message of hope is when you feel like giving up, don't. And that sounds so cliche and silly, but there's been so many times, even this past year, I actually lost a second brother.
Oh.
And so I'm battling this second wave of grief in my life. And it's been really hard. And there have been days where I just don't want to get out of bed. And I would say, taking a deep breath and telling yourself it's really, really hard right now, but keep moving forward. And truthfully, and I'm going to just continue to express this, is confiding in people. And if you feel like you don't have someone, there's always someone. And so for me, having hope is, you have to have self-reflection first and foremost. And so taking the time to have self-reflection and recognizing that, okay, this is where I'm at. And so ask yourself, where am I? First and foremost, where am I? Meaning maybe not physically where you are, but where are you mentally? Where do you want to go? And then how are you going to get there? And so I think when you have a plan a little bit and not, clinging to that plan, because as we know, life changes and things change and you have to be flexible. But just starting off with that question, where am I? Where am I right now in my journey? Where am I mentally? And where do I want to go? And how am I going to get there? And there's always someone to talk to. There's always help when you need it. And oftentimes when things are left unspoken, people aren't going to know. And so I've done, this so many times where I just assume someone knows how I'm feeling, and that's silly. And so I've done a better job of, if I don't express it or say it, no one's going to know it. And so my, hope message for people that are struggling right now in any capacity, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's a drinking issue, whether it's just dealing with trauma, dealing with a loss, is talk to someone. Someone is going to care.
Yeah. I was not aware of your continued loss. Obviously, my deepest condolences. We're coming up on the time of year when we do talk about grief awareness. Let me pivot to that just in wrapping up here. Is grief an emotion that requires any special application of the skills that you have acquired? Is there a special way to deal with grief? Because unfortunately, there's really nothing you can do, I guess. The situation can't be remedied. You just have to get through it. How is that process a little different, or do you have to apply something different to get through that?
Sure. Yes. I would definitely say even, I'm a different person. I've dealt with a lot of life at 31 years old. And so I would even compare this loss very different to the way I felt with my brother passing away in college. And I think for me, the difference is I recognize that I need to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so instead of shoving things down, as I often like to do, and then I just keep moving forward. And I want to be authentic and honest, is I have done that in some capacity with my recent brother passing. But if you don't deal with it now, the truth is it's going to surface at some point in your life. And it could be, you being short with your spouse, you being short with friends, you isolating yourself. And when you don't deal with your emotions and you don't take your mental health seriously, you will get to a point where you're having all these fluctuations in your emotional state, and you have mood swings, and you realize, well, why am I feeling this way? And the reality is you're feeling that way because you haven't dealt with your emotions. You haven't been able to express them. And so I think the best thing I can tell someone when they're grieving is allow yourself to grieve, and also don't feel guilty about it. I think there's sometimes guilt wrapped around someone grieving, and we put a timeline on what it looks like. And again, things are not always linear, and you can't put a timeline on losing someone close to you. I mean, it's just, we're human beings. We're made for connection. And so when you have that fracture in your life, you have to give yourself time to heal. And so don't put it on the shelf. Don't say you're going to deal with it on a rainy day. And I say that because I have done that. And I would say I've been battling grief more with my recent brother, more so this month than ever. And he actually passed away in March. And so deal with it as soon as you can. Allow yourself to feel it. It may come back in waves, throughout the years, but allow yourself to feel it because it is a loss, and don't negate that loss.
Yeah. That's one of the things when I've dealt with grief. Like I said, the loved one is gone. It's so frustrating. Maybe that's what I can't remedy this situation. Mm-hmm. And it's a process. It's an emotion that you like you said, you have to face the emotions and deal with yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that needs remedied. And like you said, sometimes there's no set time period. Mm-hmm. It can come back like at Christmas time, or holidays can often be problematic.
Yes.
Or any type of special event that you shared together, those can bring back those emotions, and it's okay to feel that way. And if it gets out of control, ask for help.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Deal with them, allow yourself to feel them. And when you feel like they're seeping into other parts of your life, or you're, having issues with substance abuse, and that's your coping mechanism, then that's a time to really seek additional help.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. Mm-hmm. You want to reach out to the appropriate help, whether it be professional or someone that you trust very much. Mm-hmm. If you feel the need to cope with substances, that's a red flag that you really need to reach out for help. Tina, I'm at a loss for words. You have been through so much. You have such a fantastic attitude. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Anybody who would be under your coaching would be very lucky, I got to say.
Thank you.
We have been talking to Tina Ryee. Tell us again about your new position at Malone.
Yes, I am moving into the position of the director of track and field and cross country, meaning both programs will merge into one, and it will be all under one umbrella.
That is absolutely fantastic. Congratulations. All of us here at ComQuest wish you nothing but the absolute best and much success.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Hope Discovered podcast by ComQuest. If you would like to find out more about what we do here at ComQuest, I would urge you to go to comquest.org. And once again, that's ComQuest, COMMQUEST, comquest.org. thank you very much for listening to our podcast, and we will be talking to you again very soon.